Good morning. Sunday.
Good morning.
Hey, good day.
Good day. Yeah. We have me, Dan Stanty, Mike Stanty joining us with a quarter head in the corner,
Yep.
and Mike Boosley.
Yeah.
He may be a little bit of trouble,
everyone.
but I'm going to do my best to corral him.
He's the guest of honor today. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And he's happy. So I'm happy.
So far. Yeah, he's supposed to be watching a tune, just watching TV in the other room, but this was obviously more interesting.
Yeah. You're gonna lose that.
Or anything else. Yeah.
It's good. I hope this goes viral with like a painting coming down.
On my head. Yeah, that would be about right.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
So
good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's be Sunday morning here in Calgary. We have a couple different topics we might touch on today. I think the one we were just talking about, the as is discussion, is something we should dig into. I think that could take a little while if we want to get into it. So,
well, why don't we do first really quickly just data security, because there's a reason that we're down a fourth.
Yes, that's true.
So we have Sano is not joining us. He probably could have hopped on his computer, but he had his
the Wi-Fi is not so great.
Why don't you tell the story, Dan? Because I think you're more familiar with it.
Yeah, so I got a call yesterday just to see what resources I had available to be able to wipe a phone remotely, because a phone was stolen in Europe, I suppose, is where that phone is located right now, somewhere, and stolen right out of Sano's hands. So we, within about an hour, we had the settings locked down, and we're able to wipe the phone. But I presume the phone is long gone, and nobody had any intentions of taking any data. It was, I assume, just I just want to clear it off, and maybe we did them a favor, and it's probably being sold in a flea market right now
somewhere. Yeah,
somewhere.
Oh my God.
So we thought maybe let's touch on data security and how best to protect yourself, your phone, your data, your computer. I mean, our phones are our lives these days, and so if you could put yourself in that position where you've lost your phone, where it might have your passwords, your bank cards, your photos of your families, all that stuff. How do you ensure that is? And maybe I'll ask you guys, what do you guys do with your phone to make sure that your data and your passwords are backed up or locked down?
Well, I mean, first step is having a password on your phone. I remember, like, I think, probably 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I think maybe half the people had passwords on their phones, I think, if you kind of look back.
Mike, I just muted you because we're getting some...
Is there a construction going on there?
Yeah.
Nothing's actually being built, but there is baby construction happening.
So that's one of my first keys is just having passwords on everything. And secondly, I mean, for us is using a password manager. We use LastPass, and having a master password, linked to your LastPass, so that that app on any device can generate random complicated passwords that then cannot be cracked very easily. Those are kind of two big steps, but
yeah. And then not saving that master.
What's that, sorry?
I see a lot of people, they have that master password for their password manager, and it's just like automatically saved in their browser. So it's like anybody that has access to their computer now has everything. And it's sort of like, just leave the master key right outside the front door.
And it's labeled in the folder on the desktop.
Yeah. Important passwords.
Yeah. and then I guess one last thing. Oh man, what was I going to say? Just be careful on what you open as email attachments or emails or text messages. There's just so many ways that they're sending you kind of bullshit links. Anyways, Michael,
do either of you have like a one person who knows that master password, just in case you get hit by a bus and then everything is locked down?
Well, actually, what LastPass sets up is you designate an emergency contact, like that person, And so, in the case, because my brother John Paul is technically savvy, he is the person who holds that sort of title. I can rely upon him that he will know what to do. If something happens to me. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of same thing. Yeah. LastPass. I rely on LastPass a lot. Recently I've because on my desktop computer, I used to have it so that you could leave it and come back to it and it wouldn't ask for a password. But I, just recently I've re-enabled that so that I can be away for 10 minutes or so. But then when I come back, it's it's locked and password required on all my devices. So yeah, just an extra layer of security because even if you don't need that master password for LastPass and your computer's sitting there open, like there's that social engineering aspect where somebody could just walk in. And you don't have to be hacked necessarily. It could be somebody walking into the office and going, "Oh, that looks interesting."
Yeah.
So, it's just a little extra layer there. And in terms of selecting a password, I know that a lot of people struggle with that. Selecting a password that feels secure. And when you go to your bank's website or whatever to set a password, it's always this sort of cryptic, almost convoluted, like set of requirements. Like you need a symbol, you need an uppercase, you need a lowercase, you need a number, and it has to be 12 characters or something like that. And most people that try to put together that sort of phrase in their head, it doesn't translate to something that they're going to remember tomorrow. And so one thing that I've often heard is don't try to create a 12 character password, or don't pick your dog's name or whatever from your childhood, but it's like it's pick a phrase so that you can have data security through that. I don't want to say obscurity, but just a length, right? If every character you add to your password is another one that somebody has to try and guess, and it just increases the complexity of it. So if your old password was your dog's name, Bruno,
hashtag exclamation.
Hashtag exclamation, yeah, 1, right? Because you need a number. Change your password then to my childhood dog's name was Bruno.
Yeah.
And so, you're just creating this thing that's no harder to remember.
Yeah.
But it's just, now it's 15 or 20 characters and nobody's going to be able to, I shouldn't say nobody, but it just increases the complexity. So without making it harder on yourself, you can have these more difficult passwords.
Yeah. Good tip. Now, okay, so in the case of Sano, which his phone was stolen just recently, which sucks. I guess luckily, these phones, it's all saved, backed up in iCloud, right? Like
I believe so. Yeah.
Sweet.
I mean, some way. Right? I'm not sure what he's doing for example, photos. If you're on a trip and taking photos, is there like a continuous synchronization of those photos so that there's no data loss there? I don't know. There are services, of course, like iCloud Photos, Google Photos, that can do that kind of stuff for you. But it's and I use Google Photos actually personally for that sync.
This leads us into kind of another aspect of privacy is the doorbell cameras that we often see when we're doing showings, and I've been caught guilty. I was actually caught guilty yesterday, actually, on a showing where we're on the steps of the door. I'm opening the door, and I'm having a bit of a conversation with the buyers or prospective buyers, and I forget that there's the damn Ring doorbell camera that is able to listen in on everything that we're saying. And so I didn't say anything offside or off base, but when I realized it, I'm kind of like just kicking myself.
Yeah, you're talking about the last one you saw and the next one and like just whatever, and then you go, oh, that maybe that could reveal something that you don't want revealed.
Yeah, you kind of give up a negotiating position.
Potentially, yeah, right. That's probably the biggest risk for clients when you're in a house is giving up that negotiating position. So.
Yeah, and I think just to touch on the Ring cameras, I mean, now I think most folks are aware that when you walk into a house, there's a good chance that you're being recorded. But I think it's worth remembering that the Ring cameras, their audio can be pretty decent, and they can pick you up maybe even down the pathway.
Yeah.
If you've left the house and you're standing at the car talking about, oh, yeah, that was pretty good. I think we should put an offer in.
Yeah.
Maybe even like get in the car, get on your phone and talk about it on the way. Like just get away from the home, because you just don't know if they're listening. And I know I've certainly been on both ends of that. One where you're in there and you've said a few things and you look up and you go, oh shoot, there's a camera. But on the other end as well, I've had sellers call me after a showing and be like, yeah, don't bother even following up with those guys. They hated it. How do you? Oh no, we saw them on the nanny cam. Just forget it. They're a waste of time. I was like, oh, okay. We need to have that discussion again about it. I know it's your house, but just turn the cameras off if you can.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're in a jurisdiction. My understanding is that there's no consent required from the other party, right? When you're in personal property, it's as a homeowner, you can have that recording. And it's common courtesy to maybe notify people, but there's no requirement.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So,
where does that take us to? I guess is.
Do you want to talk about as is RPRs, permits?
Yeah, let's do that. So that we were talking about the way we got there was we were talking about RPRs and whether or not somebody might have a current compliant RPR, and then talking about maybe sometimes in a listing, and especially in the most recent market, you've seen that buyers will accept the 2002 RPR that is not current and compliant, and then a phrase that gets thrown around a good deal is as is. So either the RPR is as is, or the appliances, or the home itself. Everything that's there is as is. And I don't know, Dan, you want to maybe touch on that?
That's so broad. The phrase is so broad. I think we had a situation maybe a month ago where we had a buyer on a conditional purchase, and one of the terms was that there was something was going to be as is. It was maybe the house was as is, the foundation, they're accepting the house as is, but they still had a home inspection to perform and financing. And I think the seller's expectation was that they're going to take it no matter what. This is like, in their mind, maybe a done deal. Maybe not understanding that, as is, I think what it effectively does is it removes some of the representations. I shouldn't say representations, the warranties, saying the home is going to be compliant with code or whatever, right? As is, most homes are sold effectively as is. But it's just this expectation that they can walk away without complying with the rest of the contract. Maybe I'm not sure what a lot of people's expectations are around as is, but it's it is thrown around, and they feel that they have no further responsibility around the property if they say it as is.
Yeah, I would say it wouldn't it. It makes a prospective buyer, feel quite. It sends huge question marks in their mind, I guess. Because then you're thinking about like, well, okay, what is hidden behind the walls or behind the drywall that I'm not aware of that they're wanting me to swallow and accept. And that's irregardless of, or just sort of like in addition to like the home inspection. The home inspector comes through, finds a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, so if it's as is, you can't go back to them and try and renegotiate the price. But it goes further than that, I think, where if it becomes a firm deal and there's like major material laden defects hidden behind the walls, you may not have like a really strong legal claim if you're the buyer to go after the seller perhaps for concealing that if they knew about it.
I think so. Yeah. You, as a buyer, you might diminish your recourse or your opportunities for recourse if there was something like that. With respect to the inspection, I think that, I don't know, on the buying side, putting as is in the contract effectively does nothing except that, maybe it indicates that sellers are less willing to renegotiate if there's something that comes up during an inspection. But it doesn't remove the ability to walk away if a buyer finds something and says, I understand the property is as is, but I'm not comfortable with the property as it is. So I'm walking, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
with the
you're right.
conditions.
You absolutely still can be negotiating the price.
Yeah, and so you can still try as a buyer to do
Yeah.
something like that. Of course, there's no guarantees, but yeah, it's still, putting as is on a sale that's conditional to home inspection. It up until conditions are waived,
Yeah.
buyer's still very much in control of that process.
Wouldn't you say, like, I mean, I had, an instance a few weeks ago, where we had buyers that were looking at a place that was kind of marketed as is, and we initially placed the offer and went through the home inspection, and found some things that were absolutely not written up in the kind of the write up in the description, and our buyers opted to walk away because of like things like insurance liability and other things like that. And I think it was a very smart decision to walk away, from the deal. But as a seller, it just like in my mind, it just highlights like how important I think it is just to get your home like organized, you know, T's crossed and I's dotted, before you sell in a sense. I mean,
Yeah,
things can be sold like not fully finished, but anyways,
yeah, and there is a time and a place for as is
yeah,
sales, right? We have one that's closing this week. That's it's a 19 late 40s, maybe early 50s
yeah,
house. Um, that's been maybe modestly maintained, but is really best suited to be pulled down and a
yeah,
new one put up. And so, in that case, we have a contract in place with a builder. They're going to take it over, tear it down. And so,
yeah,
yeah, we do have some as is provisions in that contract,
yeah,
because there's really, the circumstance, the context around that sale is that foundation problems are not, and there are none, but I mean, if something came up, the house is coming down anyway.
yeah,
And it's really like the house is going to be cleaned. There's not going to be any additional work for the seller to do.
yeah,
uh, in terms of getting rid of belongings in the house, but
yeah,
that's sort of the extent of the seller's responsibilities in that case. So
yeah, yeah. Michael, do you have any examples of as is, either on the seller side or the buyer side?
you're on mute there still.
I have maybe one where we had a seller not long ago on a property that it was a bit of a turbulent sale, and the buyers, they when they went to do the walkthrough, the seller, despite us having cleared conditions and being done, the seller had actually gone ahead and made some, we'll call it repairs. Were probably not needed, but then didn't quite put it back the way that it was. So on the day of the walkthrough, which was the day before closing, the buyer sent back some photos and said, like, why did he take this wall apart and not put it back? Like, he just patched it and left the patches were there, hadn't been sanded or painted or nothing.
Yeah,
So not only why is it in the state, but what did he take out or put back in there?
yeah,
And so it raised a bunch of questions. It delayed closing,
yeah,
and it meant that I had to go to the property with the buyer before they would release the funds from the seller and actually open that wall up and say, okay, well, there's nothing nefarious back here. Like, there's nothing that, I
Wow.
mean, maybe he took out the cash he had buried there behind the wall, but he had not in fact put anything that was going to be a problem behind the wall.
Yeah, crazy.
And it was 3:00 that afternoon, finally had agreement from the buyer.
Yeah.
And to complicate the matters further, actually, it was a Friday afternoon before, I think, a holiday. And so the buyer's lawyer had sent an email to our lawyer saying, we're working under the impression rather that this isn't going to close until Monday. If you can meet these conditions, then we'll release the funds. Otherwise, we'll see you Monday. Bye. And I'm out of the office now from now until Monday, so you can't reach me.
Yeah.
So it was that as is clause. I guess it wasn't in the contract, but
Yeah.
You know, like once you've met the conditions, leave it alone. So it's
Yeah.
like stop messing with the house and, you know, just complete the sale.
Yeah. Oh man. They put a surveillance camera in the wall.
Yeah, in the wall, a little pinhole. Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is why we chose all these topics.
Yeah, it all comes back around.
Yeah.
Maybe just to circle back to RPRs a little bit. I guess we never really talked about that, but as is with respect to RPRs, again, similar situation with this older house that's being torn down. You know, we had an RPR that did not have municipal compliance on that house. It was recent; it was maybe 3 or 4 years old, but it hadn't been stamped with that compliance. And in this case, the builder was fine to accept it because again, it didn't mean anything the day after closing to have compliance because there was going to be nothing there. So it's that's one thing we see oftentimes is an RPR. You know, if stairs have changed on a deck from one location to another, or if a patio's been built, or if structures on the RPR have been removed and it hasn't been updated to reflect the current state, the assumption is that because nothing's been built, there's going to be no change in the compliance of it. But those are some scenarios around where we see those real property reports being kind of pushed across the table in as is condition.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I guys, I have to get out to an open house. So
same here. Okay. Where are you going to be in? Where are you going to be?
Yeah, I'm going to be in Regal, in Renfrew.
Renfrew, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Briar Hill.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
And that reminds me, Dan, I've got to get the boys packed up and get over there because I didn't get the signs back. So I'm going to see you setting up signs in Briar Hill in about 10 minutes.
All right. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
guys.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great Sunday.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Bye.